Bitcoin is a way to escape the establishment, a way to escape the financial system that has become oppressive, that, as we know, started at the beginning of the 19th century and intensifies until becoming a full fiat system in 1971 and becoming today completely valueless, subtracting from 8 billion people time and energy. So from Bitcoin as a philosophical, the choice on why Bitcoin must be the money and is a resistance money. And I think also it's philosophical on the other side of people that don't understand it. They don't understand it because Bitcoin imposes you to challenge all or almost all your knowledge that you have, starting from money, starting from how society is structured, started from people like me that studied finance and economics, to realize that what you studied in university, it's actually, majority of it is propaganda. It's not real, genuine information or genuine knowledge for the single individual. It's just a bunch of information useful for you to be fit inside a larger scheme. And so you need to question all the realm of reality.
Hello everyone, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Here I am with my friend Immortal. How are you doing?
Hey, how are you doing, guys?
And on the other side is Marco Battistoshi. How are you doing, Marco?
Hey Fernando, hey Diego, I'm doing great. Happy to be here again and try to go deeper into some Bitcoin only topics. I think in bear market is very helpful and relevant to go back into the basics. So hopefully today we can explore more.
Yes, today we will discuss an article that Marco has written in his Twitter account that the name is Bitcoin, the largest asymmetrical bet in front of everybody else, yet only you saw it. Why? We are going to go to this article and we are going to discuss the fundamentals. I do agree with Marco. During the bear markets is the time where you really understand Bitcoin. You go in deep. It's a good time to study, a good time to build and to stack Satoshi. So Marco, starts, all yours.
Yeah, guys, thank you. So yeah, the whole idea is we try now to see the main point of the article and try to understand why still majority, I would say, the large majority of people dismiss Bitcoin or think it's not a real thing, even though, as we will see together today, it's like more than 17 years around. It grows from one single person to more than 100 million users. It moves from one single node to more than 22,000 nodes. So actually, it's pretty silly to think that Bitcoin is not real or that Bitcoin is not a great invention. So yeah, maybe I can just start with this quote, which I think is very compelling for the article. So, in the Bitcoin asymmetry lies not just wealth, but wisdom, the courage to question the entire realm of reality and pursue the veiled truth. I think that majority of Bitcoiners really think that this quote is pretty real. Me, when I started Bitcoin, I didn't understand it much. It started to click after a couple of years. And then, to be honest, the more you study and the more you see the different topics from finance, from economics, from philosophy, from energy, software, network, the more you see the reality and the more you start to question other aspects. And to be honest, I do believe that Bitcoin is still the largest asymmetrical bet that we can possibly find in financial markets. And to be honest, I think it's pretty obvious even by some charts. So maybe the first one here is from Bitwise. And basically it's telling us that everybody that invested in Bitcoin for more than 4 years or more than 3 years, you don't have any loss. Meaning that in a relatively short period of time, because 3-4 years, it's a relatively short period of time, you basically don't have any loss or any damage if you put your money and you save the money in Bitcoin. Because for me, Bitcoin, more so than other instruments, is a saving vehicle for the future. And so I think just maybe we can pause here and see also your ideas, guys. But Bitcoin is an asymmetrical bet, is one of the most sound technology out there for savings, and it helps us to see the reality and the truth better than any other financial instrument or better than any field of study that we can possibly start. So,
well, I think the most difficult part for people to understand is that concept of years in investment, right? For us, it's pretty clear that if you hold Bitcoin for more than 4 or 5 years, your chances of being in relative loss goes near zero. But it's very few people who can actually hold something for 4 years without touching it. They will be constantly trying to trade it when it's up, sell it when it's down, trying to get back in. So that's the most difficult part. It's really obvious what the chart is showing. But you just hold it for over 4 years, your chances of being in a loss are going to zero. But maybe we need to find another way to convince people to hold it for these first 4 years without selling it. That's, I think, for me, the most difficult part.
Yeah, first of all, what we need to convince people is to let them understand the value of Bitcoin. The value of Bitcoin as a store of value, not as money, not that they will go and buy a coffee with Bitcoin. And on the other side, we need to teach the people financials, because most of the people of the world think that you make money by trading. So that's the short-term vision of most of the people. What they think is, okay, I buy Bitcoin now and I want to sell in 3 months with a profit and then wait until it goes. What they don't understand is that the people that really makes money on the stock market or with investors are the ones who identify asymmetrical bets, put the money there, and hold at least 5, 10 years. I always repeat the same. Probably the most successful investor in all human history is Warren Buffett, even though he doesn't like Bitcoin. And he didn't make his fortune by doing day trading or swing trading. He just analyzed the market. He just discovered asymmetrical bet, put a lot of money in this asymmetrical bet. Sometimes he lost, and sometimes he won. And by winning, he created this empire of Berkshire Hathaway, but not trading. That what most of the people think.
yeah, it's a great point. And yeah, for Warren Buffett, I think the best two investment, I mean, one by far was Apple, and then also Coca-Cola for the dividend. But if you remove Apple, which is the biggest asymmetrical bet of the last probably 20 years in financial market in tech, Berkshire Hathaway today would be another normal, for sure, massive, big, fund, but not as successful as it actually is. And the only strategy was just to position heavily in the asymmetrical bet and do nothing for 20 years. And that's why compounding effect, you had all the privilege of starting early, see the technology before others, and don't diversify too much, but just go deeper and go strong on the conviction. Because once you find an asymmetrical bet, you should bet it strong on it. You should just put 5% into it, because otherwise you lose your edge, you lose your advantage.
Yeah, and I think that you one day did a research and discovered that the CAGR of Warren Buffett was 10% or something, or something like that.
There is a study when you take the return of Warren Buffett in nominal terms, it's like thousands of percent, which is impressive. Whereby when you remove inflation, money debasement on it, it was kind of an average. I think it was something like 17% compound annual growth, which is impressive anyways. And he remains above the S&P benchmark. So it is a success. The only comment that I did when that article came up, it was because most people thought, look at Warren Buffett. He made thousands of percent with their investment. Just renormalize the data and compare it with the more fair benchmark. He actually was way better than anyone else, even hedge funds. But it wasn't that thousands of percent as the article pretend to be happening.
Yeah, the only thing that you need to understand is to create a fortune like Warren Buffett, you need to identify asymmetrical bets and hold over time, and then CAGR and the interest, the compound interest, do everything, do the magic.
For years.
Now we have this asset that is super asymmetrical. Even now, when people think that we are late for Bitcoin, because most of the people think, no, I should have bought Bitcoin in 2012, 2013. Now I'm late. Now, even we are late, we have a CAGR of around 40%. It's going down, but will remain over 2025 for decades. So that's the point.
Yeah. So maybe before moving to why Bitcoin is superior technology, another point that when Diego spoke before for me is very important to try to help people to understand why you should hold this thing. And for me, the only way is via education, is via studying it, is via taking time to understand it, to see and give time to yourself to understand the properties and understand what Bitcoin really is. Because again, majority of people dismiss Bitcoin without studying it. Majority of mass media or journalists wrote about Bitcoin without understanding it just because they had conflict of interest and getting paid to write specific bullshit about something. So it's very difficult to hold it if you don't understand it. I think it's like very correlated, the two things. If you deeply understand something, you can absorb volatility and also hold it. If you don't understand it, you prefer to trade because you just treat Bitcoin as another asset class. And so what's the point of having Bitcoin? When it's plus 20%, I sell it and then I try to find another one. But because they don't studying it and they don't go deeper into the so-called rabbit hole. So let's try to see the property together of why Bitcoin is unique. For sure, there will be many more properties. I just try to summarize few of them. So for me, the most important one is the fixed supply. So Bitcoin is finite. We have 21 million coins since inception, and the last coin will be mined at this rate around in more than 114 years. Today, the inflation rate on Bitcoin is already half the one of gold, which is globally recognized as one of the most scarce assets on the planet. And the inflation rate on an annual base for gold is between 1.5 and 2%. And it will probably remain the same in the foreseeable future. Whereas for Bitcoin, every halving cycle, so every more or less 4 years, the inflation will be cut in half. So if today it's already half the one of gold, starting from 2028, it will be 1/4 the one of gold. In 2032, it will be 1/8 of the one of gold. So we already see that Bitcoin is much more hard to mine, and the stock to flow of Bitcoin is much higher than the one of gold already. And this chart, I think it's really exemplifying the issuance of Bitcoin. And to be honest, guys, I think it's the only asset that can be mathematically predicted, that with certainty, we can say the amount of Bitcoin in 2055, for example. We cannot do it on literally anything else. The amount of debt for the USA, maybe we can have some projection, but we have no idea how much will it be in 20 years. The amount of gold we can guess, but it's completely given to external factors. With Bitcoin, it's all mathematical certainty. It's bounded by a protocol, and it's much easier to forecast the monetary policy. With the Federal Reserve, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 weeks when the new Fed chair will arrive. Will reduce the interest rate, will increase the interest rate, will stop quantitative tightening, will do other monetary policy. We have no idea. With Bitcoin, everything is clear, transparent from now until the rest of time. So I think that's the biggest property on it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we the Bitcoiners value the most. Also the comparison with gold or Bitcoin as digital gold. I think it was useful at the beginning to kind of bring new people in with a simple comparison, like it is digital gold. It's like gold, it's digital gold. Okay, but why is also better than gold? Because of this characteristic that you, Marco, are describing, which is the mathematical aspect where everything becomes predictable, and you can see ahead in the future what's going to happen, how exactly it's going to happen. As a comparison, which is one of the things that we experience in Argentina, usually it's people tell you, well, the country cannot go further because inflation is not predictable, right? When you are in a country with under such a big stress where the inflation, you don't know if it's going to be 1, 2, 100, -3, then business cannot evolve in that environment. When you have an environment where all the math are predictable, it's much easier to make progress.
Yeah, and on the other side, we can go to the rabbit hole, deeper on the rabbit hole of libertarianism and cyberpunk movement. Bitcoin is really the only real property you can have. Because once you own your keys, you can move with all your wealth, with all your property around the world, no matter what. Imagine if you are in Dubai today and you want to leave the country and you have gold in a vault of a bank. What do you have to do? You cannot move it. You need to sell to fiat, pay taxes, send a bank transfer to another country. If you have more than 10,000 US on gold, imagine if you have property in Dubai, even more difficult to sell. We saw that the prices dropped 60%. With Bitcoin, you can just leave your country, leave whatever oppressive regime you are living in, with only 12 words in your head, and it's all the wealth we need. And talking on the future, and again, this is too cyberpunk, and a sailor said that Bitcoin is digital capital. Bitcoin is digital property. So talking about the future, if we go to the future, probably 100 years for now, when we live probably in an abundant world, in a post-monetary world, Bitcoin is going to be a way to have power on decisions. So that is the magic of Bitcoin. It gives you like a golden ticket to prosperity.
Yeah, and actually you anticipated, Fernando, my second point, which you described perfectly, which is that is the first digital artifact that can allow each one of us, just with freedom of speech and freedom of owning the private key in our brain, to potentially move all our digital energy somewhere else, without borders, without frictions, without anybody telling you can do it or you cannot do it, without any intermediaries in the process, which I think, again, for majority of people in the Western world, Bitcoin is just another speculative asset. For people living in country with dictatorship, with country with complex regimes, etc., Bitcoin is far the opposite. Is the only access you and your family have for prosperity and for keeping your savings, your time and energy into something that is unconfiscable, unseizable, etc. So for me, it makes sense to see the real adoption of Bitcoin, maybe in countries with, dictatorship situation or hyperinflation on the currency. So maybe in Africa, maybe in South America, maybe in some Southeast Asia country in North Africa, because people understand the problem that Bitcoiners see, and they act. In the Western world, we still have, a banking system that more or less is working. The general public is pretty wealthy. They can have food on the table. They don't have too many. They don't see too many problems yet. But the yet might soon turn into a problem in very short time. So having the access to your wealth just for 24 hours without any friction and without any weight, it's for me the second biggest property of Bitcoin, which is superior compared to anything else.
I think, sorry for interrupting, but
yeah.
I think that the yet in the first world countries has already arrived, because you can see in the United States how many people, I think that 60% of the population lives paycheck by paycheck. I think in Europe, I don't know how is the math, but it's going to be probably the same. And these people are the most affected by inflation. So they are living in America, in the biggest country in the world, in the top one superpower. But now the standards are their monetary system are like living in Argentina.
Yeah,
So
particularly, yes. Yeah, maybe we can debate that. I think there are still different, layers of problems, but I'm pretty sure that also the Western world will face some sort of accelerated inflation, moving into sustained inflation, maybe in some country hyperinflation. Then also with AI, maybe you lose jobs, you will be more centralizational power from government. So Bitcoiner, I think, just foresee the future, saw the problem years before others, and they just act accordingly to have their own saving into a protected system. So for me, again, this is the uniqueness of Bitcoin and one of the most important property. Then we can also discuss about how the network grew over time, because again, Satoshi launched the white paper in October 2008 and launched officially the Bitcoin time chain on January 3rd, 2009. And it was only one node of the system. In just 17 years, we have more than 22,000 nodes. Majority of them are private, so much more complex to find them if we want to see under this lens. And each node has the entire history of all the transactions since the Genesis block. Each node operates autonomously in comparison to the other one. And it's enough that one node keeps running that Bitcoin is alive and Bitcoin will survive. So when people say quantum or the USA or China ban Bitcoin or there will be nuclear Armageddon, etc., even in those apocalyptic scenario, Bitcoin probably and likely be the best and more resilient network out there, because it's enough that one computer is running that everything is there. Everything is working. For sure, there will be impact on the price. For sure, there will be impact on maybe the usage, but still technologically, the time chain of Bitcoin will be perfectly working. Conversely, the banking system, the data that you have in your phones or the majority of other networks, they will be probably destroyed much easier if you just destroy a couple of servers. So also this fact for me is very important because Bitcoin is decentralized, the networks is resilient, and we have very hardcore node runners that wants to keep the reality and the truth of the blockchain intact. And probably it will always grow over time. So I don't know, guys, what you think about those two topics, but I think when we compare Bitcoin to any other network or any other financial asset class, it's order of magnitude more secure and order of magnitude more decentralized and order of magnitude more resilient than the other one.
of course, the decentralization is the key on Bitcoin. Let me correct, because I think that I read that 22,000 nodes are the public ones.
Yes.
There is an estimation that probably we don't know because we don't know the private ones. We have around 100,000 nodes of Bitcoin. And as you said, each of these nodes have all the history of the blockchain. Even in the event of an asteroid hitting the Earth, with only one of these nodes surviving, we can rebuild our society with Bitcoin. So that's the magic when the central bank system is not possible. I don't know if they attack the servers, the Amazon servers where the information of HSBC is, your data is lost. With Bitcoin, your data is spread around 100,000 computers around the world. That's the magic.
Yeah, decentralization is one of the key elements, but it's not very well valued in general outside the Bitcoin world. People still don't get it. Why is that important? So that's when you have to point out to eventual accidents that happen. Even last year, when I think Microsoft or Amazon, some of these centralized infrastructures, had an issue, and then the whole world suffered from that. Right. So that with Bitcoin could not happen. Right. You can turn off your node, and you still have another bunch of nodes that can fulfill the job. That was also the goal with Ethereum when they attempt to be the Bitcoin killer, to make, how can we make Bitcoin better? Well, by including this smart contract thing. But at the same time, we want to keep the decentralization aspect. And that actually kills their motto, because you cannot accomplish all of the things together. It's either you choose one thing or the other one. In the evolution of the crypto ecosystem, Solana realized that. Then Solana, still being a little decentralized compared to Ethereum, is less decentralized in an attempt to be a faster network, a cheaper network. So Bitcoin has to remain as it is. That's one of the things that we try to fight against, the Bitcoin Cash bullshit and any other attempt to make Bitcoin better, because the decentralization as it is a much better system than anything else, any other network in human history. So you don't have to touch that aspect. It's one of the core elements.
Yeah, and with remember that to run a node, you need nothing of software. You need you can run a node in an old computer. That's the magic of Bitcoin, because everyone, of course, if
Well,
you
let's be fair. You need not a shitty computer.
have,
You need a good computer.
You need still maybe 1 terabyte of memory. So there are some,
you need
but not crazy
store,
free.
right? But for example, you don't need a gaming computer to run a node. So everyone in the world can run a node. Of course, you need technical knowledge, and it's really difficult to set up a node. It's not that it's a plug and play way. And that's the magic of why Bitcoin has not to be changed, because the crazy guys from Bitcoin Green, they do the block size expansion. And at the end of the day, what is going to happen in the future is that you can only run Bitcoin in centralized servers, because you must need a big infrastructure to run a node if you keep up increasing the size of the block. With this side, with Bitcoin Untouched as it is, we can run Bitcoin node everywhere, even in the most hostile situations. And this keep the decentralization of the network and also the properties, because when you do a change, when you do a fork, the nodes vote. And if most of the nodes will keep running with the same infrastructure, Bitcoin will continue on the same way. That will be happening forever, because the people who run node, they really understand the real value of Bitcoin. That's the point.
Yeah, and then another big property that I think everybody is pretty aware is that how transparent Bitcoin is, how auditable the blockchain is, and that is the first, probably it was back then, the first asset class that you can trade 24/7, 365 globally without many interruptions. And there are no barriers at entry. There are very limited intermediaries. Maybe if you want to exchange, you need some exchanges to create the volume, etc. But potentially you can also remove the exchange. You can do peer-to-peer, as in the original idea of Satoshi. And again, it's pretty easy to store it. It's pretty easy to operate with the blockchain. It's enough basic internet connection and, let's say, yes, basic hardware, nothing particularly expensive or crazy. So it's easy to see why it's more democratic this system rather than decentralized and giving power to the few. So yeah, I would say that the beauty of Bitcoin is that, again, we have plenty of software that you can just go online for free and check the status of the blockchain, see how many transactions will be in the next blocks, see the rewards, see the hash rate. Everything is live, 365 days without interruption. And I think it's beautiful. And it's the only big network that can allow the users to have this amount of data for free and every time updated without any scammers or anybody that can falsify the inputs. So I think those four properties are pretty solid. But then we need to go back to the original question: why, after 17 years, why after this network that moved from literally zero in value to a couple of trillions of dollars is still not understood? Why is that? Why people struggle? And to be honest, my ultimate point is more philosophical than anything else. Because on one side, for Bitcoiners, Bitcoin is a way to escape the establishment, a way to escape the financial system that has become oppressive, to disrupt the monopoly on currency that, as we know, started at the beginning of the 19th century and intensifies until becoming a full fiat system in 1971 and becoming today completely valueless, extracting from 8 billion people time and energy. So from Bitcoin as a philosophical, the choice on why Bitcoin must be the money and is a resistance money. And I think also it's philosophical on the other side of people that don't understand it. They don't understand it because Bitcoin imposes you to challenge all or almost all your knowledge that you have, starting from money, starting from how society is structured, started from people like me that studied finance and economics, to realize that what you studied in university, it's actually, majority of it is propaganda, is not real, genuine information or genuine knowledge for the single individual. It's just a bunch of information useful for you to be fit inside a larger scheme. And so you need to question all the realm of reality. And of course, for the average person, it's very complex. It's complex to challenge something that you grew up with. It's complicated to dismantle a certain knowledge that your parents or the society more broadly give it to you. So again, I think it can be summarized with the concept of the Platonic cave. So Plato was one of the founder of the modern thinking. He lived more than 2,500 years ago. And even back then, he was so sophisticated to see that this problem was present also in Greece 2,500 years ago, in which the majority of people in Greece and his contemporaries were stuck inside this cave. And what they perceive and what they feel and what they see inside the caves was actually a bunch of construction, a bunch of shadows, a bunch of illusions that few people on top generated for them and enslaved their mind, enslaved them in fear. And only few people took the courage to challenge those views and start the process of learning new patterns, learning new things, and ultimately go outside of the cave. And when you go outside of the cave, you become a Bitcoiner in our example. So you question so much, you study properly all the different topics. You go outside of the cave, you finally see the lights, you finally see the problem of money, the problem of inflation, the problem of fiat currency, and why Bitcoin is superior. But then when you try to go back and try to explain to other people inside the cave, they are still stuck with their own mindset. And so they feel like you are crazy. You feel like you are the wrong one. You feel like, and they marginalize you. So this was probably true the very first years of Bitcoin. Today, it has become more mainstream. But still, I think that the philosophical barrier is the biggest one. of the mass population that they prefer to follow blindly what other and the few tells them, because it's easier, because you don't have responsibility, because you don't have to do hard question, you don't have to challenge yourself, and it's just an easy process, but you remain enslaved, like Plato told us more than 2,500 years ago. So yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is very complex, but for me, the real motivation why it's not scale and it might take more time than we thought is because the philosophical and the value barrier is very hard to tackle, because it's very personal, and the masses normally are afraid to face these kind of challenges.
Well, that reminds me another of the memes on Bitcoin that is commonly heard. It's once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Once you get out of that cave, there is no way back, and it's very hard for people who are still stuck in the old system to see what you're talking, which is a reflection of a simple conversation with your friend that is a normie. Even though he's a close friend, he will never understand you. So much less try to explain the same concept to someone who is an stranger normie. That's one of the biggest challenges that Bitcoiners have.
Yeah, I like to see the Plato cave and the equivalent that is the movie The Matrix. Matrix. It's the same. So yeah, people, I think that there are a couple of things why people don't understand Bitcoin. First of all, they don't care. People like to be with their TikTok and all this crap and thinking that there is a big, the government are going to take care of that. And by voting every 4 years, they will change and have some power of decision on their lives. On the other side is because at the beginning, Bitcoin was pushed by the cyberpunks and the libertarians that gave Bitcoin a totally different use case than the real use case of Bitcoin. So for the early beginners, Bitcoin was to be anonym, against the governments, all of the things that libertarians or even anarcho-capitalists preach and the cyberpunk preach. So you see the guys with the cover face trying to explain Bitcoin. So it took years until the first real explanation of Bitcoin came out. That was the Bitcoin Standard by Safdin, even though this book is really tough to understand if you are a normie. And then the biggest, the person who understood Bitcoin the best was Michael Saylor. When he started explaining to Wall Street and the finance world what was Bitcoin. Why? Because he's an engineer. The people who understand Bitcoin the most are the engineers. Because as you said, we who study finance and economics, we need to accept that all what we study at the university is a scam, is propaganda. So the engineer goes to the first principle. To force is mass plus acceleration, the multiplied by acceleration. So that's why Saylor understood. And on the other side, what I think is Bitcoin to succeed doesn't have to be understood by the people. I think that we don't understand how this stream that we are doing works in the back end.
Maybe the point is to stop trying to explain Bitcoin the hardcore way to the normies and just find ways for them to use it without knowing they are using it. That's why it's so important, all the connectivity now with Wall Street for me, because that will have the same effect as the nodes on the network. The nodes help to decentralize the network itself, but the decentralization inside the financial system through financial instruments is the next step, I think, because it will add up a new layer of nodes. These are not the actual nodes, but they are the financial nodes which will help to spread and increase the market cap of Bitcoin, which is so important to push it up so that the whole financial system eventually come up to the realization that, oh, now we get it. Now we don't need to explain all the hardcore technicalities to everyone. It's just for the people who were the cyberpunk, the libertarians, the people who are in Bitcoin from the 15 years before, but it's not needed for the next generations to start using and adopting Bitcoin. I think that's one of the mistakes that the hardcore Bitcoiners do, try to focus so much on the decentralization aspects, on the technical aspects, which are very, very important. But maybe we can find a little different ways or analogies to explain Bitcoin and push the adoption further.
Yes, and also what I think is the narrative that we must do, that is the narrative that we want to push when we do our streams, is not talking about Bitcoin, but talking about educating people about finance, telling them that they are living into a scam, and tell them that they need to invest. So once people discover that the monetary system is a scam, that having the money in the bank is losing money, and they need to move to do investments, they will start realizing how the world works. And probably they don't go into spot Bitcoin, but again, they invest on a strategy, they invest on STRC, they invest on IBIT, that at the end of the day are good investments for Bitcoin. So I think that we cannot give the orange pill to the people the same way we took it. Of course, there will be new generation of Bitcoiners or Bitcoin maximalists, but I think that the next generation, and this is something that Mark Moss used to say, will be people that don't give a crap about Bitcoin, but they understand that the system is broke, that the fiat money is broke, and Bitcoin is the only way to protect against this broken system. And they won't give a crap about Bitcoin. They will not eat pizza on Bitcoin Pizza Day or praise Satoshi, whatever, but they will be into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that's also why I'm confident that Bitcoin is going to ultimately succeed and reprise the finance ecosystem. Because I agree with what both of you said, that now the generation is different. Now the new class of Bitcoiner will be completely different than the first one, the one back in the day. And for example, what Diego mentioned before, that the next cohort of people would not necessarily even care much about why Bitcoin or how Bitcoin works, because maybe they just buy Stretch, or maybe because they just want to have a better return. But I think that the beauty of Bitcoin is that you can discover it, studying it, and appreciating it under different perspective. So if you are an engineer, you might see the thermodynamically sound of the system, you study the network effect, etc. If you are maybe a mathematician, you see the power law on one side, and so you get interested. If you are philosophical, you can see this that we discussed before with the connection with philosophy, freedom, and liberty of the individual. If you are from finance, you understand Stretch and other instruments. So there are so many. If you are like technical software, you understand more the code. So Bitcoin for me is gonna win because it's a representation of many different aspects, and each one of us has curiosity. Each one of us has some kind of attitude towards some topics rather than others. And Bitcoin is like a big animal that touches so many of these topics. And so over time, people will be forced to understand it maybe from different angles, but ultimately they will consider it. So that's why for me it's gonna succeed. And maybe it might take more time than we wish to, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be successful because the data is already telling us that it's successful. So maybe I can close with reading this paragraph because I think it's a good summary of both the fiat system and Bitcoin. So maybe it can be helpful. Seeking the truth and being open to alternative paths matter profoundly. It is an act of individual philosophical liberation. In a world where central banks globally print trillions of fresh and out of thin air valueless fiat currency, fostering wealth inequality, Bitcoin offers sovereignty, a hedge against inflation, a tool for the unbanked, and a silent counter to authoritarian control. Bitcoin is the resistance money, a tool for integrity and freedom, challenging the corruption influence of centralized powers. Under that light, Bitcoin became a philosophical mirror, reflecting our collective blindness to alternatives beyond the familiar. I think the resistance money is like, if we see all the movie, like Star Wars, Dune, like all the blockbusters, people tend to ally with the resistance. Also in metrics, we tend philosophically by heart to go with the resistance because we intuitively know that the resistance is the good guy and the oppressive one. And so you want to support them. So I think we just need to flip and that Bitcoiners are the resistance and they're not like a new class of wealthy people that just want to put rules and legislation on others. But on the contrary, we are the resistance that try to create a new, more open society built on a foundation that is Bitcoin.
Just one, let me push back a little bit in one aspect there, is that the resistance only come up during hard times. During the good times, only weak men are around, so there is no resistance on this time, and everything is cyclical. So Bitcoin was born in a hard time during the financial crisis. Once the good times come up again, then that resistance dilute itself and men become weaker, and then the resistance dilutes. That's why in history always it has been like a up and down cycle of resistance, weakness, resistance, weakness. So Bitcoin was the expression of that. The resistance grow up out of the hard times, and our responsibility is to keep it alive even during the good times.
Yes, our responsibility is as Bitcoiners and this new generation of Bitcoiners that became Maxis after Michael Saylor is to understand that we need to push Bitcoin as a Trojan horse for the financial system. Bitcoin is not going to succeed creating circular economies, paying to the shop on the corner with Bitcoin. Bitcoin will succeed if we can put it as a Trojan horse in the financial system and can absorb all this money from the 300 trillion US dollar market cap of the fixed income assets and can go into Bitcoin. Because, for example, I don't know, you're in Indonesia. Have you paid anything in Bitcoin since you arrived? No. And you are a Bitcoiner. Are there any places that you can pay with Bitcoin?
I mean, there are few. So if you want, you can find them. But yeah, for sure, it's like 0.001%, maybe less.
Who uses this? The Bitcoiners. If I put the analogy with, if I go to the corner and the woman who sell bubble tea on the street start accepting Bitcoin, probably I will go and I will pay with Bitcoin because I like. And for me, it's romantic to pay with Bitcoin. But if the people who is queuing, I am trying to convince them to pay with Bitcoin, they will say, why? I need to do this if I can pay with my line pay or with the QR code of Thailand. That's the thing. If we want to make Bitcoin imposed by this way, we are going to lose. But if I can tell a person, you know that the fiat system is a scam. You lost around 8% of your value of the money just for holding it in a bank account. But you can put this money in an instrument that gives you 11.5% a year. It's going to be, that can be done through your account in your Bank of America. This is going to be much effective for hyper-Bitcoinization. that's the thing that we have to fight for, and we need to keep fighting for.
Yeah. And maybe just to close, I want also to give a fair share of people why Bitcoin maybe it's complex or why they didn't fully understand it. Because again, as we usually say, Bitcoin is a complex animal that touches so many different aspects. I think this slide from Anil Patel can just summarize it, the major topics. So Bitcoin, as we know, is an open software. It's based on the network. It involves a lot of hardware, ASICs, mining for the node runner. So it's like a complex of both software and hardware. It requires to understand energy, to have a conversion of cheap energy into mining. Otherwise, it will become economically inefficient. So you need to understand also this side. And then, of course, finance and economics, which is probably the topic which I can speak the most. It's like how literally the majority of people, even out of finance class, economics class, have really no idea of how the system works, of how the economics and the majority of the spending is done. Because again, we live in a era of monetary expansion, an era of Keynes, which actually rewrote in favor of the central bank's majority of the idea about economics. We should go back to Austrian principle. We should go back to more outdated, maybe, principles, which were more sounded, which were more grounded with hard money, with other topics that recently we completely lost. So just to summarize, Bitcoin is complicated, but it's a summary of all these topics. And again, people should try to understand from one angle, and maybe becoming more curious, and maybe go deeper to the rabbit hole and become at some point orange pilled. So I hope this article could help people to understand or to give some curiosity out of it, and maybe expand on themselves.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was a great talk talking about the fundamentals of Bitcoin. We can have one of these every week together with the Bitcoin treasury companies. But yeah, we need to go for the core to understand what is Bitcoin and why it is the lifeboat on the sinking ship that is the fiat world.
Yeah, maybe we should do one. Maybe I should write something Bitcoin, not crypto, because still majority of people that are new say, but why Bitcoin and why not another crypto? Because for them it's like, I don't know, marketing on X. Some other people bought a shitcoin. They say that it's faster, that is easy to upgrade, that is more resilient versus quantum. And so the new people always fell into this trap of diluting themselves, buying crypto rather than Bitcoin. I understand why. Because they have a lot of money that can raise from new investors to use for marketing, to use to pay influencers, to use to go affiliation links, to go and corrupt the media by bribe them. Bitcoin doesn't have any central authority, any CEO or CMO running campaign. So it's much more complex to understand. But yeah, maybe I should write something like this, and we can discuss why shitcoinery is bad.
One of the reasons why the Lightning Network have lost the battle against Solana in that particular aspect that is very important for majority of the ecosystem, which is payments. It lost the battle because Solana have better marketing.
Yeah,
because it has all the infrastructure to promote the idea, and actually they actually build a pretty good product. So while the Lightning Network, it just romanticize bit conversion with no CEO, no department, marketing department, nothing. So how can you compete against another system that is offering technically almost the same, but also they have a big marketing department? Maybe that's another big topic that we can expand some other day.
So, guys, I think that was a great talk. Marco, what is your social media so people can go and read these amazing articles?
Yeah, Battistoshi 93, and yes, you can go on my profile. You can see a couple of articles, one on Satoshi and this one. Hopefully, every week I can write something appealing and interesting. And if you want, guys, we can just discuss it together if will be point of interest or attention. So
Excellent. Thank you very much, Marco. Thank you very much, Immortal.
thank
And
you,
thank
guys.
you very much to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media, because doing so, you help us a lot to paint the world orange. Share this episode with people you hate. Share this episode with people you love, because we must reach 8 billion people and give them the orange pill. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.